My favorite story about Pluto is actually how it was named. So when scientist Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto, he didn't know what to name it. So instead of asking a fellow scientist or naming it himself, he opened it up to the public and asked them to submit ideas for a name. And he got one from 11-year-old girl Venetia Burney, and she suggested that the planet should be named after the god of the underworld, Pluto. And so he thought that was a great idea, and thus Pluto was named. I thought it was kind of a cool story because it's an unusual beginning for an unusual planet. As an avid space lover and an astronomy employee here at UNT, and just someone who learned about the planets and was always curious on what happened to Pluto and why they reclassified it, I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to be able to teach others about what actually happened with Pluto. And so I found out that despite emotional ties to planetary status, Pluto has been reclassified as a dwarf planet due to new discoveries and a reevaluation of the definition of a planet. So today I'd like to discuss 1, what the definition of a planet is, 2, why Pluto doesn't exactly meet those criteria, and 3, what that means scientifically. So first we have to define planet. And according to the International Astronomical Union, or IAU, a planet has to meet 3 criteria. 1, it must orbit the sun. 2, it has to have enough mass to overcome forces and to have hydrostatic equilibrium, which means that its gravitational pull is strong enough that it creates a spherical shape and also has an effect on the objects around it, such as our moon to the Earth, orbits the Earth. And the third criteria is that it has to dominate the area in its orbit. And this definition actually didn't exist until 2006 because they had always kind of just assumed what a planet was. We only had 9 that we could observe, and they never felt the need to create a real definition. But in 2006, they started making discoveries of planet-like objects in our solar system, and they weren't sure if they were planets or not. So they had to create a definition so that for that discovery and for future discoveries, they would know if a planet or if an object was a planet or not. But unfortunately, these criteria made Pluto fall short of the status of a planet, and so they had to demote it to a dwarf planet. And there's a couple reasons why Pluto doesn't meet these criteria. One is that it doesn't have hydrostatic equilibrium, whereas it does have a spherical shape and its gravitational force is strong enough to do that. It is very weak compared to the other planets. For example, one of its largest moon, Charon, actually doesn't revolve completely, or orbit completely around Pluto. They have a binary gravitational system where Pluto and Charon actually gravitate around each other. So it doesn't quite meet that criteria. And the third one is that it doesn't meet the third criteria at all. So during Pluto's orbit, it goes through the Kuiper belt, which is an asteroid belt on the outer ends of our solar system. And the objects in the Kuiper belt are a lot smaller than Pluto, but yet it doesn't have the gravitational force to push those objects aside or to gain them into its own orbit. So because of this, it was reclassified as a dwarf planet. And even though this reclassification was based off of fact and just meeting criteria, it still caused quite an emotional stir because, people didn't want to rewrite textbooks. They didn't want to let go of that idea of the 9 planets. And although it is kind of hard to, think about losing a planet, it's actually quite helpful in our need of scientific progress. And it'll help us understand, our solar system, other solar systems, and how those were created and how the universe works. So it's very helpful in learning about where we are and how we came here. And so, even though Pluto is not technically a planet, it still plays a really big role in science and progress. And no matter what, it's still just a big rock in the sky, and it always sends its love. Thank you.